You can tell it's the mother of all talk shows, not just because it is the highest rating independent political talk show in the entire world, but because, as those of you watching on Sunday remember, we are remorselessly under attack. For people my age, what I'm about to say to you sounds terrifyingly daunting. But if I tell you that we were cyber-attacked more than 40 million times in a few seconds, mainly from IP addresses in Bulgaria. What did I do to Bulgaria and Singapore? Then if you're d'un certain age, that might seem bamboozling to you. But younger people will know that these denial of service attacks happen to people all the time, but they don't normally happen on such a scale. That interrupted our interview with the legendary Sam Husseini. But of course, it was all captured for posterity, and people were able to catch up with it, and they have been doing in legion. And of course, when we tried to get into our email box in order to make the necessary inquiries of servers and so on, we discovered that millions of emails had been sent to our mailbox, making it useless and unable to be accessed. So we had to delete all from our mailbox. So if you are one of the innocent people, even in Bulgaria or Singapore, who wrote to us, you'll have to do it again, because the entire mailbox had to be eliminated in order that we could access it. All of this means that our new website, which should have been launched today, will instead hopefully be launched this evening during the show, so that you can all go and visit our new email, spanking brand new email website rather, unless, as I say, you're in Bulgaria and Singapore. I'm thinking of placing sanctions on Bulgaria and Singapore for the next few days, just till we get to the bottom of what happened. Anyway, to be attacked on such a scale, in such an organized way, clearly means that we are cutting through. Well, he's back. Donald Trump, full of the usual bravado, 30 pounds lighter, £1 billion richer after the launch of his Bitcoin, the Trump coin. Even I've got some Trump coin. Everyone is buying it. That's not a financial recommendation, by the way, because actually mine has lost some ground, but it will, I'm sure, make it up. But he is 30 pounds lighter, and he is looking fighting fit. Vainglory, braggadocio, ludicrous hyperbole, all the Trumpian traits were on view over the inauguration couple of days. And I must say, much as I despise them, I have to take my hat off to Biden, Harris, and co., who had to sit there on the platform whilst the orange man lambasted them, left them without a name, talked about the disaster they had been and the parlous state of the United States as a result of their administration. I suppose it's business as usual. They sat there and they listened, but they probably did not hear this main message, that centrism, represented by Biden and Harris and by Macron and by Schultz and Baerbock and by Sir Keir Starmer, is so very last decade. It is finished. This is the era of the populist. Left populists like me and Sarah Wagenknecht in Germany, and right-wing populists like Nigel Farage and Donald Trump and Marine Le Pen and the rest. The centre cannot hold. It has been too much of a disaster. Why would anyone give it a renewed mandate? Why would anyone want 4 more years, 5 more years of what we've all been through these last 4 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Why would anyone want more of the same? And that's the lesson that I'm sure the Democrats have not learned. Certainly the British Labour Party has not learned it. Reports are coming in this evening that Donald Trump is indeed going to reject the nomination by Keir Starmer of the twice dismissed and utterly discredited friend of Jeffrey Epstein, Lord Peter Mandelson, as Britain's putative ambassador to Washington, D.C. There is no rational explanation as to why such an unforced error was committed by Keir Starmer. There is no logic to the British diplomatic service with generations, centuries actually, of diplomacy under its belt. They do diplomacy well because a diplomat is a man sent to lie abroad for his country, and they are very, very, very good liars. So they had a legion of people they could have picked to send to Washington, but they picked a man twice sacked for corruption from the Tony Blair government. You have to be pretty corrupt to be sacked for corruption by Tony Blair. And a man who, even after his criminal conviction for child sex trafficking, still maintained a bosom buddy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There is no reason, no rational reason why Starmer did that. And therefore, there must be a darker reason. And as I understand it, there are many journalists in England, those who still exist, who are busy unearthing the reason why. Watch this space on that. Now, Donald Trump is a man who should be judged on his actions rather than his words, partly because his words contradict themselves, sometimes even in the same sentence. He declared that Spain was a member of BRICS while signing executive orders and taking a press conference at the same time. Joe Biden couldn't have done that. But if Donald Trump really believes that Spain is a member of BRICS, man, we've got problems, because that indicates that the people who are briefing him are just as stupid as the people who were briefing the now departed administration of Biden and Harris. You know what a BRICS nation is, don't you, Mr. President? It's a nation that's in BRICS. Spain is not in BRICS. Ergo, it is not a BRICS nation. So don't go threatening them with sanctions or anything, because they are not guilty of that which you alleged. And his talks about Russia have been a mixture of good and bad, just like everything that Donald Trump says. Everything he says contradicts that which he said perhaps even half an hour before. But it's what he does that matters. And here's what he's done. Before even getting a chicken McNugget unloaded onto the desk of the Oval Office, he brought about a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, it might not last. And he maybe only did it because he'd quite like a condominium there in the best part of the country with the best weather, as he extraordinarily opined again in the Oval Office just earlier today. Now, it isn't actually the best weather, and it is entirely toxic, and anybody who bought a condominium in the Gaza Strip right now would have to be pretty foolish indeed. But the facts are, for the first time in 16 months, there is no child, no woman, no man having American bombs and missiles tear them to pieces as they shivered in the tents in which so many hundreds of thousands of them are now sheltering. The aid vehicles that Egypt could have allowed in at any time if they had the guts to do so are now flowing in 900 trucks yesterday. The horror of a genocidal frenzy of killing, which has killed, maimed, and mutilated hundreds of thousands of people. Dr. Abu Sita, the celebrated British surgeon who has several times been inside Gaza over the last 16 months, carrying out operations by candlelight, carrying out operations without anesthetic, amputating children without anesthetic. He says that 16% of the population of Gaza has been murdered. That's why we call it genocide. I know that that word doesn't cross the lips of the so-called corporate media in Britain and in the United States. I know you get thrown out of the BBC studio mid-interview if you use the G word. But any frenzied killing of 16% of the entire population of an area cannot be described in any other way except by the even more exceptional word Holocaust. Israel and its American and British and other satrapy allies have committed a Holocaust in Gaza, and we will never, ever allow them to forget it. And neither will an entire generation of hundreds of millions of people around the world. Israel has died in the hearts and minds of decent people everywhere, and it will never be revived. It will be kept on life support for sure. But if the people of Gaza are no longer being slaughtered, for the time being, the people of the West Bank are being slaughtered instead. The frenzy of killing has simply moved, and Israel is now attacking with fighter jet aircraft. Fighter bombers are dropping bombs on, get this, their own country. Yeah, you see, they insist that the West Bank is their own country. Indeed, the new Donald Trump appointee to the United Nations as ambassador this day said that Israel has a biblical right to the West Bank, and she called it Judea and Samaria. A biblical right. Well, property deeds don't come any more modern and up to date than a biblical title to a territory. She believes there's no such thing as a Palestinian, something which even Israeli leaders stopped saying, if not stopped believing, more than 30, 40 years ago. But the US ambassador to the UN believes that there is no such thing as a Palestinian. Can you believe it? So the slaughter has moved to the West Bank, but so has the resistance. There is no point in a ceasefire in Gaza and an absolute escalation of all-out war in the West Bank because, well, it'll be resisted by all the people that resisted the slaughter in Gaza. And you won't have solved any problems at all, President Trump. But if I sound happy that Trump is in the White House rather than Kamala Harris, I am happy that it's Trump rather than Kamala Harris. I'd much rather it had been Dr. Jill Stein, but that was not to be. But I'm certainly happy that it's Trump rather than Harris. Why? Well, for one reason only. See, I have a confession to make. I don't care what Trump does inside the United States of America. I accept absolutely that the American people have the right to decide through their democratic process who can come into their country, who must get kicked out of it, who will be allowed to sit in a cage at the border, who will be stopped by a wall, who will be subjected to the reactionary, though in many cases it may be. That's not my business. And it's not the business of anybody else other than the American people. But I'm glad Trump's in for one reason only. Because my number one overriding, dwarfing any and all other considerations is to stop World War III. Because, you see, if we have World War III, there will be no Palestinian cause. There will be no racism, sexism, misogyny, or any of the other ogenies or isms to argue about. If there is a nuclear war, it will be the end of all humanity, and all other questions will be rendered instantly otiose in a nuclear flash. And Trump is going to stop World War III. He has said so. Now, he's already begun to bargain about that. And the opening gambits in his bargaining leave me thinking, as I just said, that the same guys are doing the briefing. He threatened Russia today with sanctions. He'll sanction them if they refuse to make a deal. But trade between the United States and Russia is absolutely minuscule, and stopping all of it could make no difference whatsoever. He said the Russian economy was in trouble, but it's the opposite of in trouble. The Russian economy is in rude, rosy-cheeked health. It's the economy of the Western countries that sanctioned Russia that are in trouble. Sanctions have helped Russia. Russia is living better and a more healthy life, and is already the most sanctioned country in the world. So, Donald, you don't actually have that tool to bargain with. And you certainly don't have the wherewithal on the battlefield to stop the remorseless, day-by-day, hour-by-hour advance of the Russian army. Trump says that European forces entering Ukraine is a non-starter. Let that be a lesson to you, Macron, Starmer, Schulz, and the rest. Last time, a couple of European countries tried to defy the United States and send their armed forces anywhere was at Suez in 1956. And within 3 days, the United States had made it plain that it would tolerate no such adventurism from its client states, from its protectorates, from its satrapies. So don't try it, Starmer. Don't try it, Macron. The Americans won't be with you, and your troops will be slaughtered by the Russian army and its hypersonic weaponry. Well, there's so much to be going on with, and when you've got Chris Hedges coming up as your first guest, well, you better get out of this monologue. I'll be right back. Stay tuned.